routine, passing every test. Teach you tricks that make the students shine. From Florida Tech with the love divine. Guest drop by with knowledge to bestow.
Hey Panthers, thanks for joining us for part 2 of our podcast video series. My name is Anushka and I'm the instructional designer here in Academic Technologies. We're here in the DSL in the library and I'm joined by my awesome coworker Paulina, and we also have a special guest today, our director Jared Campbell. Hi Jared.
Hello everyone. It's great to be here. What a lovely day.
Do you want to introduce yourself and tell
Sure.
us what you do, Jared?
I am the Director of Academic Technologies here at the Florida Institute of Technology, also known as Florida Tech. We are in charge of all things Canvas, our learning management system, plus we are also the great overseers, and I don't know if I'm using the right words I should use right now, but we also take care of the online programs, and we help professors learn how to use exceptional pedagogy in their classrooms, and we're here to just have a gosh darn good time.
Right. We inspire others so they can inspire, right, Jared?
That's exactly why we're in business. We have to inspire people so that they can inspire their students, because once everybody's inspired, our job is basically finished, and we can lead people to greatness.
Yeah, awesome. So today we're going to be covering how to draft the best presentation ever, right, Paulina?
Yes, right. So we saw on our last session a little bit about the psychology behind making a good presentation. Today we're going to see more about design tools and cool tricks that you can use. And it's a pleasure to work with you both. And so we're going to start with our presentation called Drafting the Best Presentation Ever. And first we're going to start with and recall a little bit about a quote we saw on our last video. It says, "A presentation is never just about the facts." So Jared, what do you think about this quote?
She doesn't want to call on me because she probably heard enough of me last time. Go ahead, Jared.
No. I want to
Don't
hear
worry.
you too, but I just
No,
want to.
it's okay.
I just want to,
Anushka,
I just want to
step aside.
hear from our dearest boss.
Of course. Carry on, Jared.
So a presentation is never just about the facts. Presentation, your job as a presenter is to light the fire of inspiration in the people that you're teaching, whoever's in your audience. Our goal is to make them love the subject, and so that they can become the best versions of themselves and further the craft of whatever they're trying to learn. That's our job. Our job is to inspire others. So it's not just about the facts. It's about the outcome and what people are going to do with this newfound inspiration.
Beautiful.
You like that?
I loved it.
Thanks.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, I probably agree.
You want to add something, Anushka? I don't want to leave you behind.
No, it's okay. I mean, I agree with everything that Jared said, especially when it comes to presentations. You want to capture the audio and the visual and all those things that we'll, recall and talk about later on too.
Yes. So we're going to move into the design process. And the first thing we're going to see is the objectives for this section of the podcast. The first one is design slides without overwhelming the audience, enhancing readability and engagement, creating relevant and well-integrated graphical elements, and promote storytelling, which is something I am particularly very excited about.
Me too.
I love stories.
So the first thing we're going to see here, and I'd like to take one moment to explain about this design model. This is the D-School Design Thinking Map from Stanford University, which is a little bit of like a guide that encourages iterative, user-centered problem solving that adapts based on feedback. So it's ideal for any decision making. The first part of empathize has to do with what we saw in our last video. It's about the learner's analysis and how people learn better from the psychology point of view. But today we're going to jump into planning a presentation. This is going to be the first part of the three that we want to cover on this section of the video of this podcast. And the define part articulates the problems you want to solve. And I want to go back and say that we need to plan the presentation to see and show the big picture. What do you guys think about that?
Should I go first? Okay.
Yes, you should.
Oh, thank you. Step aside, Jared. So the big picture, whenever I'm teaching my course or, faculty in regards to instructional design stuff, I like to first have kind of like a roadmap. That's how I view a presentation, right? Like meet the students where they are, kind of show them the main nuggets that we're going to cover, and then at the end have a key takeaway or a call to action. So it's a guide, right, of this is our class time together, this is what we're going to cover in the presentation, and then this is where we aim to end up at the end of the class. Jared?
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. Your presentation to see and show the big picture so that people can go, aha, on their own, right? We can't, in some ways, we can't really teach anybody. All we can do is inspire them enough to go, wow, this is so great, and then they intake the information. So that's kind of what we do when we present information is we really light fires in these people's, our audience's mind so that they can be inspired to actually intake the information. And then if we do it well, it will go into their long-term storage and they will become experts possibly in that field.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and one of the things that I also want to point out is if we go back to the slide, this is not magic. We actually need to do a process and a thinking process in order to show this big picture that we're talking about. So I would like to show you a couple of ways that I personally like to do it. And the first one is the brainstorming. So in this part, I really like to step away a little bit from the computer and, leave my creative side room free. And so this is not the time where I edit or I filter. This is just the time that I just pour ideas into. It can be posted like you're seeing right here, or even a notebook. So this is a way I like. So the point of view or the problem has all the possible perspectives. So the idea actually is capturing that big picture that we were talking about before. And if we move forward, after that brainstorming process, I like to group and identify the core. This is where I dig for that one memorable audience-centered gem, like the big takeaway. I start chunking similar ideas together, hunting for the core theme that ties it all up. They circle back to one main theme, with each part pushing the story forward and amplifies the central message. So this is the part when I, for example, when I draft how many slides I will get or how many topics I'm going to talk about in my PowerPoint. So that's the way I like to do it. Do you guys have any other method that you like to use for drafting?
Yeah, sure. So I kind of live in my head. So once I know I have to give a presentation or I know that my class is coming up, I'll typically start brainstorming ideas in my head. And then I'll take notes, right, of, I want to cover this, or, I see something in my day-to-day life that might be applicable to the lesson. So I do that. And then also we talked about chunking information in our previous podcast. So if I know that I'm covering something that has a natural category or that happens in a sequential order, then I already have a framework or a guideline of, it happens in these 5 steps. So I know that I need to cover the 5 steps, right? Or if this type of presentation kind of goes together naturally, then that's how I'll do it. Jared?
Well, I like to think holistically about what it is what I'm going to be teaching. So, of course, everything is objective based because that helps me focus a lot on what I'm actually going to teach. So if I'm able to get this information kind of spread out in front of me, whether it is similar, what you're doing with Post-it notes, or if I'm using like the slide sorter on PowerPoint. I mean, it doesn't have to be PowerPoint. We use Keynote or a host of other different tools. But I like to make sure that there is, I'm hitting the main points. And a lot of times I actually will be able to thread another type of, like, either the story through it or an objective that adds a little bit of value to possibly my students' lives, so that they can maybe see the world in a little bit more of a nicer context, or something that they can kind of relate to that will help them find maybe a little bit more peace. It's like they call that the hidden curriculum. I try to include that when I am developing presentations, because I think while the topic and the objective is what I'm really after, I think it does a service to our students and whoever's in the audience if we can leave them with something a little bit bigger to think about, because they will maybe incorporate that into their own world, and it helps them find their quality world.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, and I love the way that you're talking about the hidden curriculum, because I think that ties up with something that we talked about earlier, that it's about the empathy-centered approach to making a presentation. Right. Remember when we talk about the human connection, and that connection also leads us to a better way of learning. Right. And I think there's one tool for tidying it all up. And Anushka, I know you are an expert in this field, and I really would like you to take the mic for this. And it's about telling a story. Can you tell us something about, because your course, your communication course, is a lot about telling a story. So tell us why this is important for also making a presentation.
Yeah, no pressure here. So for those that don't know, I've taught speech, so like public speaking skills. And again, when you're giving presentations, in the textbook and in the teachings, it emphasizes the importance of stories. And Paulina did a great job of talking about, I think humanizing ourselves as instructors, because a lot of times the power dynamic in the classroom is I'm the instructor, you're the students, I'm talking at you, and it's a one-way communication model, and that's not true, at least not for my class. I like it to be, a conversational dynamic. And so I try and find stories, whether before I plan my lesson or sometimes there's a story that happens after, and we can talk about this if that's happened to you, Jared, but one example in particular that comes to mind is in my class for speech, I tell the students, you never know when you're going to be put on the spot, whether it be professionally or personally. And so in a previous role that I had, I was an international ambassador at the Melbourne airport, and I basically had to give a welcoming speech last minute notice because my supervisor wasn't able to. And had I not had a story or had the tools in my toolkit to know how to craft this speech, I would have been struggling really hard and probably embarrassing myself. So, I think sharing that story, even though they're like, what? Like, you're a professor? Like, I didn't think you get nervous. It's like, no, it happens. It means you care.
Yeah.
So I was just able to kind of, infuse my own personal stories within that story of like, oh, I love traveling. I'm so glad you guys are here at the airport to travel. And I made it more personable, and I think talking from like a heart-centered space and, being more authentic, I think makes you more relatable.
I think it does even more than just that. I agree 100% with what you're saying. But mechanically, if you can remember a story rather than a series of a bunch of bullet points and facts, I mean, it's a lot easier to talk about the information that you're talking about, especially people that are teaching really in-depth, highly technical stuff. I mean, we're a STEM school here, right? So one of the things that comes with, one thing I learned about education all these years is that education happens in the absence of threat. And typically stories are not threatening. The students understand you're telling us a story. You have a story that helps you remember the things that you're about to say. And the interesting thing is that the students become a little bit more interested in what you're talking about, because who doesn't like a story, right? Now, not only is it good for their motivation, but it also allows them to remember some of these details at a later date because they can remember the story. So it actually has a function in terms of helping them feel nice, calm, collected, and motivated, but it also helps them to remember the information. So it goes into their working memory and then hopefully into their long-term storage because they care about it, because stories typically have a little element, at least a little or a lot of an element of that allows you to care about the subject for a minute.
And I love you talked about long-term memory, and this is part of the cognitive load theory we cover on our last session, and also promotes the germane process. So I wanna come back to the slide when we talk about storytelling, because I believe the moral of the story actually is that that great storytelling delivers more than just data. It combines, an emotional connection, adds some context and relatable, inspiring anecdotes, making it memorable. This is what audience crave, not just fact, but the story behind them. When presenters connect information with narrative, I believe they engage the listener as if they were in a conversation. Do you agree?
I do. If you give me a mathematical formula for something, right? Though the formulas for that particular thing, whether it be a chemistry, maybe let's just use chemistry for an example. There's a lot of formulas for how to work out problems. And those formulas were created in a context of a lab, and they had to empirically determine that this was what is going on in their search for truth, right? So that story is embedded even in the highly technical things that we're doing. Everything in computer science has a story behind it. Everything in any of the hard sciences, any of the physical sciences, has a story behind of why that thing came into being, right? Because in the search for truth is what really science is. That's how those things come about. It's not just they pulled it out of some Cracker Jack box or something. They had to discover these things using measurement and using tools and thinking about things and using math. And all of those things are the product of a story.
Yes. So I totally agree with both of you. I think storytelling is a great exercise for the creation of our PowerPoints. If we go back to the D-School model of design thinking, in this part of the process, we can already draft our slides. Because we already set up, our brainstorming, our core message, our storytelling. Right now, we can go in the creative phase where you can generate a variety of ideas to explore all the different possibilities. So in this part is where I like to design my slides and how you see it as storyboarding off the screen. This is where I like to draft my storytelling, and my core content and my ideas off the computer. That's the way I like to do it. Again, it's not for everybody. This is the way I like it. So this is where I like to use a notebook, and then I can add more things as I go, or erase and add bullet points and stuff that I want to draft in my storytelling of the screen. Do you have any other method that you like?
Okay. Jared's fiercely pointing to me. I guess that's my question.
It's your question, Anushka.
Yeah. Well, for me, I think because the longer you do something, the more tips and tricks that you develop over time. So I'm sure at one point I was very methodical and laid out steps very specific to make sure I, covered everything I wanted to. But for sake of time, we're all really busy. Instructors don't have a lot of time, or maybe they, want to focus their, class time or prep time in something else. So I kind of do two things at once. I'll create my outline in PowerPoint, let's say I'm using PowerPoint for the presentation, I will lay out the outline within the slides. So they're kind of like placeholders, and I can visually see the order and the structure, and then I can move them around in there. Jared, do you have any ideas?
You know, I kind of do a similar thing. I do at first kind of like a brain dump when it comes to getting ideas. At least I have a sort of like a map, if you will. It's usually very ugly and plain. It's white background. It's black
It's just text, right?
It's just text. I'm just like flicking stuff at the screen. And what I'm after is to find when my mind will connect to finally there will be that story. That storytelling is super important in my development process. It really is. And I will take and find that thread and say, okay, there it is. And then once I find that thread, I'm able to chop stuff off, add stuff to it, add some dramatic effects so that I can, I look at it when I'm presenting in the classroom. What my job is to do is blow their minds, right? I need my audience to be so inspired that the hair on the back of their neck is standing up, that they're thinking about deeper things than, just my presentation. They're going into the fabric of their own reality. That's what I'm after, right? So the storytelling really works that way, and the dramatic effects that I want to hit and amplify at certain spots, just so I have their, not just their attention so that they can take notes, but I have their minds and I'm cradling it in my hand where they're waiting on the very next word I'm going to say. That's what I like to see. I'm in it to watch the lights go on inside people. I love that I call it teacher crack. And I really do. And I just adore that feeling of watching that. Not because I feel like I'm doing anything, because I really don't feel like I'm doing anything. It's the learners that are doing it. And I just love to see that, So that's how I do it. I throw a bunch of, white text or black text on white screens. And then once I get to this kind of fever pitch where I'm like, yes, there it is. Now I found the thread. Now I found the hidden curriculum. Now I found it. It all kind of lines up. And then half the time I throw half of that stuff away. And then so that
Scrap that. We're starting over.
So I can tell I just put it off to the side. I hide those slides and I come back to make sure that I'm giving them the full learning objectives that I'm after. I'm making sure that they can meet those. So, but I have to have a good time while I do it. So this is what it really makes me. I really love that feeling,
Yeah, and I love the way that you present. I mean, you're a great speech person.
Oh, shucks.
And
because I work with Anushka.
It's very, it's very inspiring to see you speaking, with such a, passion about topics. And
you should see me when I care about what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Oh.
But you have a talent that, it's rare. Not everybody has that. But
it comes with
for
practice.
The rest of us, that we like to present that we are passionate about our subjects, but at the same time we need visual aids. Yeah. Comes to the point that we need to add graphic elements to our presentations, right?
Sure. Me too.
Yeah. So this is the point in our drafting of the best presentation ever, where we talk about prototyping. And in the prototyping process, we start creating the slides using design elements. So you talked about how you like to start with a plain white background, very draft. I like to do it, with a pen and paper. Anushka has her own methods to do it. But this is right now is the part that we sit down and say, okay, what are going to be my graphic elements? And this is where the design elements come in the picture, right? And we're going to start with, in my perspective, is one of the most powerful ones, and it's about high resolution pictures. But before we start talking about the pictures itself and the tools itself, let's come back a little bit and let's recall a little bit about multimedia learning principle and theory. if you haven't see it, please go and check it out. But
You're talking about your first presentation, right? The first podcast.
the first video. So remember our working memory has 2 channels, and one of them is the pictures that we can see, and that's the sounds that we can hear. And I'm gonna pass the mic to you, Jared, because I know you know a lot about this stuff. And tell us why this is important, and why and how do we make this work and happen?
Well, the theory of multimedia learning kind of states a couple of things. I mean, we'll just stick to the top 2 right now, right? Really, I'll start with the first one, is that a multimedia presentation has pictures and it has sounds, right? So words in this case mean sounds. What was shown on the screen, words mean sounds. So you have the glowing picture. We're looking at our eyes, with our eyes at it. This is our visual channel. We are looking at the visual content. This can include words on the screen. This can include the pictures. This can include any of the animations, anything that you're capturing with your eyes. And then the other channel is the auditory channel. So it's what you're capturing with your ears. So we have, when we're presenting, and our presentation cannot exist without us presenting, otherwise it's just a PowerPoint file or something like this. Our ability to be there speaking and talking about the information that we're presenting is a real big part of this 2-channel process. That's the auditory. So you process stuff with your eyes and your ears when you're that's the multimedia principles. There's 2 channels, and the thing about them is that they can be overwhelmed, right? But what I mean by overwhelmed is your working memory. So I remember in the first podcast that you did, there was a slide that had like a wall of text, right? And this is like a classic example from the death by PowerPoint kind of thing, where there's all this text on the screen. You're really, the presenter's really using it as a teleprompter, but they're going to pretend that they're actually presenting information. But what's happening is the presenter typically feels a little uncomfortable because they left their notes on the screen and they want to turn around and look at it, right? So they do this sort of dance in their head. Well, they look back at the screen, they look back at the people. The people in the audience are trying to read what's on the screen, but there's this person talking the whole time. So they can't really pay attention to the words on the screen because they have to kind of halfway listen to what the presenter's saying. And when the presenter's speaking, they're also trying to read the words on the screen, so they're not even able to pay attention to the person that's speaking. So it just falls flat. If you don't, if you do this death by PowerPoint technique where you have all these words on the screen and you're out there doing a song and dance, trying to get them inspired to pay attention to what it is that you're saying, it's not going to work. It's just not going to work.
Not to mention taking notes, right? If the student is trying to read and listen and take notes, and they're kind of switching gears from, the PowerPoint, the professor, my notes, and then what did they say? But then I need to read this. So they're all over the place.
Yeah, the default behavior is that they're writing whatever is on the screen, and they're not paying attention to a word of what you're saying. And then this is what happens when you go to these classes. And we've all had these classes where you took notes to the point where your fingers are hurting. And then somebody asks you, what did you learn about in your class today? You're like, I have no idea. I have to look at my notes. It's because your working memory becomes overwhelmed because both of these channels are being overloaded in different ways, and it's just creating noise in the mind. So you're not transferring any knowledge. You're just giving people a bad time, So
yes, and I wanna show you an example, a visual example of how this happened, how this actually happened in the same lectures that you're pointing out. So let me talk to you a little bit about picture superiority effect. So basically is what we are saying, that people remember sometimes pictures better than words, especially when we only get a quick glance at the info. And let me show you this first slide. And what do we think about that slide?
I'm cringing. The slide I mean, first, the color is what draws my attention first. It's like shading in weird places. There's a whole lot of text. I'm not really sure what the connection is between brown circles and sharks.
Yes.
Jared.
So
Yeah, if I look, when I see a slide like that, I don't want to read it.
Right.
This little punk rock kid inside my brain that lives there is like, I'm not doing it.
Right.
I'll close my
yeah.
eyes.
So what happened with this presentation is that turns it into a reading test. And people, like you say earlier, Jared, is focused on reading instead of listening to the speaker. So it's likely to be forgotten as it doesn't engage the audience at all. But let me show you a quick fix on this same slide. And what do we think about that?
I like that one a lot more for, one, the simplicity. I mean, the color, the image, I see the connection, right? Oh my God, there's a shark. Blogs are like sharks. Okay, I see a connection, a theme. It's straight to the point. I can listen to whatever the presenter is saying because I've read the statement. I can see the shark and put these things together in my mind.
Yeah, I mean, it works like poetry here, you know, when, and I think your presentation should all work like poetry. Everything should kind of tie in together. When I see that picture of the shark, I'm like, oh, that's dangerous. That's neat. But I process all this visual information really quick. Now, here's an interesting thing is that, you know, evolutionary psychology tells us that language wasn't our first thing that we developed as a species, right? But we did have to run away from predators in the environment and these sorts of things. So visual information is much easier for us to process, you know? It's much easier for us to process. When we throw in language, it adds this other part of our brain that's trying to pay attention to these things, and we kind of bog down. So we have a larger capacity to get our working memory overwhelmed if there's too much extraneous information on the screen. And in this particular case, the threat of the shark isn't rendered with the text. You know, it's just not. It's rendered with the picture of the shark. It really bolsters that message up, and it makes you want to hear what the person is going to say. Plus, you can read that in like a fraction of a second, and then you can pay attention to what the presenter is saying. You know, it's neither of your visual channel nor your auditory channel, which are being overwhelmed, which means that your working memory isn't being overwhelmed. So there's not a lot of noise in the system. You can get right to your point.
Yeah, exactly. So let me come back to the examples for a minute, and let me say that the second slide. Can we say that complements the presenter's spoken words and enhances the message that we wanna give, right? Mm-hmm. And it captures the attention, and it makes the point clear and more impactful. So it's much more memorable since it engages both eyes and ears. So it allows the audience to focus in the presentation rather than reading. Mm-hmm.
If I would also like to add that it engages our emotional response too, because it's like, oh, there's a shark, oh, like that. Mm-hmm. You know, it's like deep down in there's a threat. Oh. Now I said that learning happens in the absence of threat. But when we're just looking at a picture of a shark, that's much different than actually being in the water with a shark. So it's not the same thing. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So, but we care now all of a sudden. If we saw a slide like that, I want to hear what the presenter's going to say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And do you imagine this shark picture in a huge screen in an auditorium, for example?
Epic.
It will be epic, right? All right. So moving on to the next slide, I'm going to show you a place, image bank that I like to take my pictures from, because sometimes it's like, okay, high resolution pictures, okay, but I have to pay for them. They're really expensive. Well, there are a bunch of different tools that where you can get high resolution pictures. This is one of them, and I've created small videos with all these resources. This is the one that I like the best. This is FreePic, and we can get all sorts of high quality pictures, vectors, AI generated pictures, and all of them for free.
Free? Really? Oh, that's why they call it FreePic, isn't it?
We love a good free.
Oh, don't we?
Free pricing.
I know.
Yeah.
Free. Anushka, don't you use another tool for some? pictures as well?
Well, for slides, yes, and I think we'll probably get into that in a little bit. But Haiku Deck is one that has high resolution images, so it's super easy, and we can definitely talk more about that.
Let's recall about. I wanna know more about Haiku Deck because I've heard that's amazing. But first, we're gonna talk about, and this is the part that we're gonna talk about. That is the style coherence. So you don't have to be a graphic designer in order to create good slides, like design and coherent style slides. You can get them from, for example, Canva. Canva also is free. It has a paid version, of course, but you don't have to have it. I don't have the free version, and it works great for me. Here you can have all sorts of templates, all sorts of designs. It can be playful, it can be serious, it can be modern, it could be anything you want. It also has an AI tool, and I also make that small video for you to look at it. So Anushka, you were talking about Haiku Deck. I want to know more about that.
Yeah. Well, first I want to say thank you for creating these videos, because I know this is your world of expertise, and it's so awesome to see you be excited and share that knowledge with all of us. And I also want to say that I love Canva. I also use Canva myself, the free version. And I like, using a tool that's new and different that the audience probably hasn't seen before. A lot of times when you see PowerPoint, you're like, okay, awesome, PowerPoint, seen it 100 times. But when you see Canva, you're like, that doesn't look like PowerPoint. If it is, you took a lot of time to make that, right? So I like using new tools and then sharing those tools with my students, right? Because if they have to make a presentation, hey guys, this tool is free and available for you to use. Haiku Deck, it's similar to Canva or PowerPoint because you can search for high resolution images, and then it focuses on the image, but you can also, lay text over top of the image, minimal text. And you can have it timed. So if you're giving a presentation, it will, auto change the slide for you. So you don't have to do the awkward next slide, please, which is fine. Yeah. But it's good practice, right? To practice timing and those sorts of things. And they also have an app on the App Store, which we learned earlier. And that's really exciting. So if you needed to make something on the fly, I think, Jared, you had to do something like that, right?
Oh, yeah, totally. There are times where somebody will give me this like unreasonable deadline assignment. This is something with the world of work that happens. Hey, we're going to go talk to the most important person on the planet in like 15 minutes. Can you share with them some of the things that you've been doing? And you're like, sure.
Right.
But a tool like Haiku Deck, you can like and kind of riff while you're doing your presentation, but it doesn't look like you're riffing. It looks like you actually know what you're talking about, and you've got really good design elements that you're working with. So Haiku Deck is exceptional in that way.
It's super easy to use, right? It's very user-friendly because you don't have to work with so many different types of fonts and colors and all these things that we love, but in a pinch, right? If you're just trying to have a, solid foundation, Haiku Deck is a really fun tool.
And you point out something very, very important also, and it's major in presentation. This is about the font choice. So we have typically in graphic design, we have two types of typography. We have the serif fonts and the sans serif fonts. So the serif fonts have the end of each letter strokes that are easier for the eye to read, printed text especially. And so this was created to guide the eye from one letter to the next one while staying on the same printed line. So the key word here is printed, because we are not dealing with printed text. We will prefer to use the sans serif fonts. These are the ones that are without the little lines. They are more legible on computer screens because sometimes lines are distracting on the lower resolution screens. So while you may like better the elegance of the serif font, know that white spaces gives the brain a break and makes your text more readable. So some of the sans serif fonts that we can get free in every typical computer are these ones.
I like Questrial.
It's beautiful. I like the Q. It's so you can find all of this in the computer, and all of them look great in presentations. The next
Fun fact. Do you know serifs, where they came from? They came from back a long time ago, people would paint the words, right? And so that was part of the brushstroke, or they would be chiseling it into stone. So if your presentation is going to go back to the Stone Age, you can use a serif font. I'm kidding. No, that's
Old habits die hard, Jared.
That's funny. My brother used to make gravestones, actually.
Oh, really?
A long time ago.
Wow. Very technique and skill.
Yeah. So he's more of a serif guy, I guess you'd say.
Yeah.
A serious person.
It's very, very serious.
Elegant, if you will.
All right. So moving on to the next design element. Design elements. You asked me before, what is element?
Yeah. What is element? Is that, you mean like hydrogen and nitrogen and all that stuff?
No, chemistry teacher.
Oh, I used to be a chemistry teacher.
I know.
For a year and change.
It counts.
It does. It's on my resume.
So no, I'm talking about design elements like 1, 2, 3.
Oh, design elements. Counting the design elements,
Yeah.
like word or a picture or things
Exactly.
like this.
Well,
Okay.
but this case we're talking about graphic elements.
Okay.
Visual graphic elements. I mean, for example,
Like animations?
no, I mean like this one, like
Okay.
clip art or PNGs. Have you heard about PNGs before?
I have.
file type?
I can barely spell PNG, but I love the pictures.
It's states portable network graphics.
Ooh, sounds fancy.
Yeah, it sounds fast.
Is that wait? Are those the ones that have the transparent background?
Some of them.
Okay.
So you have to know how to search for them in Google Images. And I also made another small video on how to get those fancy pictures. And
She's so productive.
She's full of videos.
Jeez.
She's like an arsenal.
I love making content.
Yay.
Not in TikTok though.
Oh, good.
No.
I don't have a TikTok.
Just podcast. So these graphical elements, they really are, if they really work in your presentation, if they have a purpose, then use them, because they're nice, they're simple, they don't have the nasty background behind it, and just make sure you don't overuse it. Only if it's purposeful. I'm
Purposeful.
Purposeful. Sorry, purposeful. Yeah, English is not my first language.
You're doing great, though.
Thank you. All right, let's keep going. The next thing that we're going to talk about is the background of choice. And I have a small example here. So we have these two worlds where if you are in the front of the audience and you want really your audience to follow you while you're speaking, you better have light text over dark background. But if you want to highlight something, or you want your students really pay attention of what they are seeing on the screen, you better use the other way around, the dark text over light background.
Dark text over light background would be good for like quotes or something like that you want them to really digest really well. Is that? And then the black background with white text is when you want them to pay attention to what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Right.
This is where you remember, did you ever know about that guy, Guy Kawasaki?
Yes.
Well,
I didn't.
Go for
No.
it, please.
I didn't, Jared. Tell me, please.
Tell us.
Right, everyone's like, is that the motorcycle guy? Well, I don't know about that, but I do know that he's a presenter that does this, a really cool type of presentation style where it's big, bold, like one word or something like this over a plain background. And I think it's cool. If you've not seen a Guy Kawasaki presentation, They're online. Go up to YouTube and find out. I mean, those of you guys who really want to hone your craft in presentations, it's good to have a few heroes like that. I have a couple of heroes. Guy Kawasaki's one. Lawrence Lessig is another one. There's a few other ones. Some of the people that even people that I've worked with before. Jason Griggs is a wonderful presenter. I like to see his presentations.
I agree. I love listening to him give presentations.
Yeah, he's really great. So these are some of my heroes.
I really hope we can have him for our next session.
Yeah. Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun. I'll make it so.
Maybe.
No, I will encourage him for that.
Strongly encouraged.
Well, I think it's a good thing. I think you'd like it, actually. I don't think we're going to have to do any encouraging at all. Just give him the microphone. He's a DJ now, you know?
Let him run
WFIT.
wild with it. Here's a microphone. Let's go, Jason.
Yeah. He'll be like, 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1, you know, and you kick a beat, and you guys will. I'm kidding.
We'll
He's
make it
not like
happen.
that.
All right. So remember we talked previously about text with images?
Yes.
All right. So I'm going to do a small exercise for you, and you will give me your point of view on this one, okay?
Okay.
All right. Ready?
Ready.
All right. So I will show you this slide. What do you think about this example?
I mean, it's a bird picture. I mean, it's nice enough. What do you think, Anushka?
The green is yelling at me. I mean, I like that
In a
shade
bad
of
way?
green. Kind of. I think it's overwhelming for me. I mean, I like that shade of green, but it's competing with the beautiful picture of this parrot, right? So there's the color on the left, there's color on the background, there's a lot of text. So I'm not really sure like where I want to focus.
Yeah, I'm not really drawn in. It looks like somebody used the PowerPoint template slide, you know, the one where you have the picture on the left and the text on the right.
Drag and drop.
Yeah, drag and drop. And this is a telltale sign of somebody who didn't want to do the job. They just wanted to finish.
You know, I don't think it's that bad, but especially because
Because you created it? No, I'm just kidding.
It's a lovely
it's
picture.
perfect.
Yeah.
Actually, what are you talking about?
Right.
Dang,
So-
she's right here, Anushka.
All right. So I like when I include a quote, like in this case, I like to use graphical elements that appeal to people's emotion and visual interest, and also boost the impact of the slide. But there's a lot of issues here. There's the background color, there's a frame color, there's the typography of the quote. And let me show you how we can make this a little better.
Oh, wow.
A bit better?
So much better.
Yeah.
That's
I like
great.
the focal point here is clearly the parrot, right? And I love photography. I love the focus up front with the blurred background. I'm
Yeah.
a sucker for that every single time. But I like that you're also using the rule of thirds, right? So if you divide that into top third, second third, you know, you have everything kind of cohesive at the top. So I know my eyes are naturally going where they need to go.
Yeah, I love that bird. I want to be friends with that bird. I want to talk with the bird. And the fact that I like that bird so much means I'm going to honor it and read the dang thing. Because the other one, it was just like, I didn't want to read it. I was just like, okay, text words. But this is now, I'm honoring the parrot. So I think this one's really nice.
So I trust that you created this, Paulina. So can you tell us about
Yeah, sure.
the font color too? Because it looks like that is
Yeah.
not black from here.
So, well, instead of just adding a small photo of graphic, like my last slide, I tried to integrate the text into a larger image. So what I just did is I make the picture bigger. It's not that I made it bigger. I just used the whole picture and I made it fit to the size of my...
So the picture is now the background.
Yes. And also I used the white space, the blank space in my picture to use to place the typography. And also I used a color that is present within the picture, so it blends all together.
It looks really nice.
I really like that one.
Yeah, me too.
So with small changes, we can really make a change, an impactful change, don't you think?
I
Definitely.
agree.
I mean, you can see it yourself here. I
Yep.
mean, the difference in those two slides is vast.
Yeah. I agree.
Well, the funny thing is it probably took more work to do the first slide than it did to take
Definitely.
to make the second slide.
I was just thinking that too, right? If you just use the picture and make it the background, then you plop the text and you're done. Instead of having to thicken the border of the frame of the picture, then changing the color and all those things. So that's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the trick here is to have high resolution pictures. That's the whole trick. Because if you have high resolution pictures, you can open them, you can scale them, and they're never going to pixelate, and they're going to have a high resolution in your screen.
Unless your presentation is massive, like the billboard or something.
It's still if it fits in your computer, if it looks good in your computer, then it's going to look good in the screen.
Oh, I like it.
All right. So moving on the last, I'll say the one of the most important issues, and the thing that the people ask me the most is how many elements per slide.
Oh, this is the elements. We're talking about the element. That's the number of
numbers,
things
yeah.
on the screen. Right?
The other one I meant the graphical illustrations and
I see.
Yep. So the number of elements per slide. And to give a quick answer to this, I will give you guys another exercise.
I love these
Yay.
activities.
You ready?
Post
I'm ready.
lunch, here we go.
Let's do it.
Here you go. All right. So there are many ideas on how many objects you're supposed to have. So we'll be counting balls.
Okay.
Okay.
Great.
We're
All right.
counting.
1, 2, go.
Okay, got it.
Got it.
All right. That took you about 2 seconds, 2.5 seconds, more or less, right?
You're probably measuring Anushka. I feel like I was slower than that. She's faster, counter.
All right. Next one. Go.
Done.
All right.
Oh, tied.
Was
All
it? We
right.
did?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, well, that was
Learning your techniques.
a little more than a second.
Yeah,
So it was less than before.
Yes.
Grouping.
And now,
Oh,
Done.
got it.
super fast, right?
Same time.
Lightning.
Cha-cha.
So,
Thank you, man. I have
what's
another.
the big difference, do you think? What's the big difference between this slide and this slide?
There's more balls on the first slide.
I like the organization of the last one. That's kind of grouped in a way that I can split and count quickly.
Yeah. It looks like a hexagon in a way, right? Which is what my brain went to. Hexagon, 6. You know?
So I'm going to explain you what's happening here. So this is the number, actually. You will find that the number between counting the first slide and the second slide is 500%
It's a 500% difference
between
Good
one and
gravy.
the other. And
Difference or faster?
difference
Okay.
in the reading time.
Okay.
So I will suggest the following. This one, you have to count them, right? And it takes you like 2 seconds. And this one, you see it. So the cognitive process of counting takes 500% longer times and requires 500% more energy resources to execute them than just seeing. So the magic number of elements per slide,
6.
6. Look at that.
right?
And I'm paying attention to the 6 because it's the white background and black.
Good job, Jared.
See?
You're learning.
I'm learning.
Yeah,
See
good
that?
job.
Teacher's
You
pet.
were paying attention.
I was paying attention. Gosh,
Good job.
Thanks. Yay. Doesn't it feel great?
Well, the only bad thing about this is, yes, you have to make more slides.
Oh,
There are not shortcuts for this, and I believe that the amount of slides is not the problem. The problem is the amount of items per slide.
you know, it's funny. There are so many professors that I've met that have these super dense slide decks of all kinds of information. I watched somebody the other day with this slide that they must have created in like the 90s or something like that because it was the 4x3, you know, and it was totally jam-packed with text. And he was using it as his notes, as what usually is the case, right? So my take on this is You don't need to necessarily limit the number of slides you have. If you need notes, bring notes with you, right? Don't rely on your slides to give you those notes. It's nicer to have them in front of you. You present better when that happens. But I find it to be this kind of strange psychological thing where presenters want to limit the number of slides they have. You know, I've given presentations that have over 100 slides in them in like 5 minutes. I literally have. And not to say, I'm not bragging about that. I'm just saying there's nothing sacred about limiting the number of slides that you have. So if you have a slide that can be broken into 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe even 10 different slides, do it. It's easier for your audience to take a hold of that information. It's not going to be so hard on their working memory. You know, there's not going to be as much extraneous stuff on the slide, right? The working memory will be right where it needs to be, working at a pace that's comfortable, and the information is going to go into long-term storage. It's just science, folks.
Just science.
Just science.
Yeah, you just have to get the clicker thing.
Yeah, get a clicker.
Yep.
That's right. It's easy. Or hit the space bar, you know?
Yeah.
I always like, a little bit of the flair of the drama. So sometimes hitting the space bar is a fun way to, even if I have a clicker, you can go over, wham it, and it gets your students kind of like, what's going to happen next, and gets their brains kind of ready for something. I don't know. I like doing stuff like that. So it's fun.
All right, we will be wrapping up our session already because we get to the end. We had such a good time today, I guess, and yes, we talk about many things, but it was super fun for me at least.
Wait, can I give a shout out about that design slide?
Which one?
The one from the D school, Stanford D school.
Yeah, yes, we're going to see that in just 1 second. Boom.
Can I just talk about that for a second?
Sure.
You know what I really like about the slide is that this slide is useful for creating anything. Yep. It's this design process is useful whether or not you're making a new supersonic jet, or whether or not you're making a PowerPoint slide or a Keynote slide, or even drawing a picture for that matter. I think it's a great tool, and I really think it's cool that you brought these design elements into a presentation about giving presentations. I think it's amazing.
Yeah, and you can use it actually for everything. When I took the class, the design thinking, the human-centered design department.
Shout out to Troy Weeks.
Yeah, excellent professor, Dr. Troy Weeks. Thank you for showing me this, because this has helped me tremendously in every task that I do that has to do with creative process. So not only for creating, let's say, an app or a device or engineering device or whatever, it also helped me drafting lesson plans, curriculum, and it helps you with everything. So it's an amazing tool. So we can talk about a little bit of the test part that we didn't cover. It's about, this part is not actually something that you can control. This will happen just after you present, after you test your slides, and you can do like a small learner assessment to see how successful you were with your new knowledge. Right?
I think that's great. If you can give that information in a way that will be memorable, you can measure that, and then you can see the proof for yourself that these techniques work.
I know for me, it's, here's how to give a speech, and then we assess the students on how they give their next speech, right? And you can also use other tools that we have that we also, recommend in academic technologies, like PlayPosit, like an interactive way to measure their understanding as they go through the course.
Great tool too. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So for a quick recap, design slides to see and show the big picture, enhancing the readability and engagement without overwhelming the learners, being a storyteller, and using design elements such as high-resolution pictures, sans serif fonts, nice clip art, and 6 elements max per slide. I just want to point out something. The balls exercise that we did. You can find the video where I took that idea from on the references right here, and all the research that we did for these series of PowerPoint skills are right here. So if you want to check them out,
We're passionate about our presentations, and so it's good to have resources. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, I'll say that this has been really fun, and I love doing this. So thank you, Jared, for allowing us to take this idea and run with it and supporting our creativity. And Paulina, it's been fun to work with you. And thank you, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Stories and wisdom with seeds they sow. Best practices on the podcast waves. Inspiring educators to be bold and brave. Tune into Learning Lights every week. Hear the voices of the minds that speak. On a journey through the halls of education. With every episode a new revelation.